Hey, it's Ruben Lowing. It's Saturday morning here in McAllen, Texas. It's 33 degrees outside, right? But it's nice and sunny. It's going to warm up later today, and then the weather's going to come back. I mean, it's the valley, so it's warm. Primarily most of the time. This is just every year it gets a little cold. This year it got a little different because of the energy. The power went out. We had to stay at church from Monday night to Thursday night because we didn't have any heat here at the house, but they had heat and electricity at the church. That's a whole different subject. All right. But while I was at the church, I met this guy who was wanting to talk to the church about solar. And I'm like, oh, so I started talking to him. My son started off working for Solar City, which later became acquired by Tesla. Then he started working for Tesla. And so we started a conversation. And I asked him if he was doing anything with commercial. And because I knew some commercial realtors here in the valley, and he hadn't yet. He's in the medical field. He's just trying to do something in marketing with this with solar. There's some real strange things in Texas. The energy costs in Texas are so cheap that it's like the state of Texas doesn't give credit for tax credits for solar because they don't want to compete with the oil and gas industry here in Texas. But that for commercial anyways. I don't know about residential. But so I got to talking to this guy, and I knew a retired Navy pilot, lieutenant commander, that started a real estate company focusing on commercial lending in San Diego, California. And he would do these seminars talking about how to, about the cap rate. Okay, so what cap rate means is it's a multiplier that determines basically how much your property's worth. Okay, so based on the rent that you're collecting, annual rent you're collecting from your income, your net operating income from the property times this multiplier determines how much your property is worth. So the lower your operating expenses are, the higher your operating income is, okay, and which makes it, with the multiplier, determines that you can actually make your property worth more money by either keeping it, higher rents or higher rate of occupancy in your property, and so solar could be a very good way for commercial properties to increase their value of the building, just because it's going to lower your cost of energy. But also, but with energy so low in Texas, that's tough. But when you have situations like you did last week, where there's, we didn't have our whole complex, like 40 units in this complex, over 40. None of them had power. None of them didn't matter who your carrier was, you were out, just because some bureaucrat chose that they were controlling the blackouts. Okay, it had nothing to do with anything except for the windmills that froze up because of the freezing rain, right, that they put in a year and a half ago. But it got me thinking about, because I'm not in that business anymore, but it got me thinking about the extended escrow trust through Legacy Shield. Now, Legacy Shield is no longer part of the WFG platform, but we can still market Legacy Shield. But when you use the strategy with the extended escrow trust with a finance premium, in other words, you have a property, an investment property, a non-owner occupied property, and you sell that property through the trust. As long as the equity stays in the trust, you don't pay capital gains. And you can borrow against that equity to pay the premium on a index universal life. So you won't pay capital gains or tax on that because it's a loan. Money grows tax deferred, so it grows faster, and when you take it out, it's tax free. Oh yeah. Something else too. And so that's the way you can get that. So that's where the tie-in comes in at, because you need to have an insurance license, and you need to be able to have the carriers to be able to make that transaction happen. But the other factor is, I try to self-educate myself a lot, and I'm listening to these people talking about money, and they're Series 7 licensed, all right, and they bash whole life, and they say that the average rate of return on a whole life policy is 1.2%. And I'm not going to disagree with them, except they lump all cash value life insurance into whole life. Now, index universal life has an average return of about 8.75%. When we do illustrations, we can only do illustrations of like 7.75% is what we do the illustrations for. Okay, but when you look at, see, what you don't lose can be considered a gain. Okay, you understand that. With these index universal life policies, they have a floor, mostly anywhere from 0 to 2%, and they have a cap anywhere from 8 to 15%. And in some cases, like Pacific Life, who I have, after 5 years, there is no cap. Okay, which gives you a potential of a better average return over time. So with that said, see, Dave Ramsey says, that all policies are whole life. Okay, what that basically means is that those premiums got to be paid forever. Okay, for as long as you want to keep that policy alive. What happens is when you get a rate of return in the policy that's high enough, okay, and the cost of insurance is low enough, then you end up, the policy pays for itself. Okay, so it lasts your whole life, right? But the cost of insurance and the accumulation in the policy is the difference. Okay, and that's why universal life is not whole life. Okay, index universal life is not whole life. So the average rate of return is significantly better than what these other talking heads are telling you, because they don't understand, including Dave Ramsey. All right, with that said, there's an opportunity with real estate investors right now, especially with this strategy, the extended escrow trust and universal life, index universal life. Okay, and we're like the only one doing this. This extended escrow trust has been around for a while, because the way they use it mostly is when somebody's selling an investment property and they don't have another property lined up with equal or greater value. And right now, the inventory is scarce, so finding another property is tough. So it's harder to find a property of equal or greater value to buy in an 18-month period of time than it was. And if you're trying to do a 1031 exchange, your 18 months run out, and then you're going to end up paying capital gains. Got that? And when you put it in they call it there's a patent or copywritten term, deferred escrow trust. Does the same thing. You can hold that property for longer until you find a better property to buy. Okay, and that's how they usually do it. That's how they usually do it. Okay, if you're selling a property, you don't have another one to buy lined up, then they will recommend that you do these, and they usually charge about 1.5 points. It's about 30 basis points for the extended escrow trust through Legacy Shield. That's one benefit, right? And the other benefit is, then there's the two. That's the deferred capital gains, and then if you do the finance premium into the universal life, that's how you access that equity without paying tax on it, and I have to tie that property up in a 1031 exchange or buying another property of equal or greater value. All right. So with that said, there's opportunity when you understand how to figure, utilize the cap rate to figure out the value of real estate, and by making the real estate by retrofitting it to solar, then that property becomes worth more money. But there's going through a period right now where people aren't wanting to tie their equity up into more real estate, and that's where this extended escrow trust with the finance premium into a universal life makes it very appealing. All right, hope you learned a little something today. This is a little longer than I wanted to go, but I think I did a good job of explaining it. All right, have a great day.